Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a transmission oil change on our 2018 F-150 Raptor, and this will apply to any of the second gen F-150 Raptors. Alright, so let's take a look at all of the parts that we need before we get started. So I have 7 quarts of Mercon ultra low viscosity. That should be enough to refill the transmission after dropping the pan. We have a fluid transfer pump. I have a new transmission pan gasket. These are actually reusable, but I went ahead and got a new one. Didn't want to take any risks there. A new transmission filter, as well as the gasket for the filter that fits onto the neck. These are all Motorcraft parts. We will link all of these part numbers in the description below. All right, so here we are under the truck. We're gonna start by removing this transmission skid plate. There's 2 bolts in the front here. These are both 10mm, so we'll go ahead and loosen those. Okay, next up, there are 2 bolts on each side of the skid plate, so one here and one there. These are 13mm. Go ahead and break these loose. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So now with the skid plate removed, we can see our transmission oil pan. The first thing we want to do is remove these heat shields. So there are 3 10mm studs. So 1, 2, and then one right here in the back. We'll remove the nuts from these studs and we'll be able to drop these heat shields off. And the one on the rear is a little bit harder to get to. You can either use an open end wrench, or if you have a shallow 10mm and a U-joint, you should be able to get onto it. There we go. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, so at this point, we can start removing the bolts that are holding the oil pan in place. I'm gonna start by removing the back row of bolts. I don't believe it will start leaking with just removing this back row, and these are the hardest to get to. I'll then remove the front row of bolts. I still don't think it'll start leaking. And then I'm going to loosen the side bolts starting at the rear. And hopefully by doing that, it'll allow the pan to start draining from the rear. And this is gonna be a messy process. I do have some cardboard down. We'll have an oil catch can as well, but we'll loosen the side bolts starting at the rear, and hopefully the oil will mostly drain out of the rear of the pan. So let's get started. The corner bolts here are a little bit tough to get to, so I'm gonna use an 8mm end wrench. And I like to start with the hardest ones to get at so that you can get them out before it starts leaking all over you. And leave the easy ones for last. There we go, our first bolt. All right, another bolt. All right, so we actually have started dripping. We'll get our drip pan in place. I did remove the first stud, and these studs are actually 13mm. All right, another stud removed. At this point, all of the rear bolts have been removed. I'm going to change my plan a little bit and just start working my way forward on each side and hope it continues to drain out of the rear. And I'm not completely removing these bolts, I'm just loosening them all. And that is draining out of the rear now. This one. crack this loose. Actually, it's not as bad as I imagined, guys. I might light that drain for just a couple of minutes, and maybe we'll get down below the level of the gasket. All right, I'm gonna loosen another bolt here. Okay, things are slowing down. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen another bolt here. Just keep working our way forward. Those are all loose. Look at that. I think we probably hit the seal level. Pretty much all of the oil has drained out that's above the gasket line. So I'm going to remove all of the front bolts, remove 4 of the side bolts, and just leave the studs in, and they're loose, but just leave the 4 studs in, 2 on each side to hold the pan in place. And then we'll remove those last 4 when we drop the pan. Okay, so at this point there are only 4 bolts holding the pan in place, so 2 on each side. They are loose, but don't be fooled, there's still a lot of oil in this pan. So I'm gonna have the second half of Suburban Ranch come under the truck here, hold the pan up tight to the transmission while I remove these last 4 bolts, and then we'll try to lower the pan and spill as little transmission fluid as possible. Lower it down slowly. Okay, so we need to slide back a little bit. A little back, a little further. Just a hair further and I can clear this, I think. There we go. Okay. Let's come forward. Did either.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Oh! Oh. Got it!
Quart was recording.
So there you go. You just need to finagle it a little bit and try not to spill it all over yourself like we did. Okay, so at this point, we've removed the pan. You should have spilled very little transmission fluid either on yourself or on the floor. And now we're ready to remove the filters. 2 8mm bolts, 1 on each side. We'll go ahead and remove those. And a little bit more fluid should come out, so we've got our catch can below. Okay, long bolt here on the passenger side. Shorter bolt here on the driver's side. Should be able to just slide that off. There we go. And we'll drain the rest of the filter out. Okay, so at this point we're ready to install our new filter. Here is our new gasket. I'm going to insert that into the valve body. So that just slides right in. And there's a little shoulder for it to stop on. And then we've got our new filter here. So I'm going to slide that in as well. So we've got a little bit of oil on the neck to help lube it up as it goes in. There we go. So the gasket stayed in place. And then we'll reinstall our bolts. So long bolt over here on the passenger side. And short bolt here on the driver's side. And then we'll torque these filter bolts to 96 inch-pounds. There we go. So we've got our brand new gasket. It actually has a couple of little plugs here that hold it up. So we should be able to just put this in place. And we've already cleaned off the gasket mating surface on the transmission. So we'll push this into place there and here. There we go, look at that. All right, so here's a look at the pan. There is a magnet in the bottom and that's all been cleaned off and wiped out. So it's ready to be reinstalled. All right, so now that we've got the pan up, we're going to start by replacing the long studs. So we'll remember where those were positioned. And we're not going to run these all the way tight. We'll just run them up a little bit snug. I still want the pan to be able to move as we place the rest of the bolts in. We've got the 4 studs in. Everything is still loose, so the pan can move. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the bolts started. Now with all the bolts snug down, I'm going to go around in a crisscross pattern and tighten everything initially to 96 inch-pounds. And then these rear bolts, I'm just going to have to tighten by hand because we can't get the torque wrench on them. And as a last step, we're going to take the studs only to 106 inch-pounds. Okay, and the last step is to reinstall our heat shields. All right, so the next step is to remove this fill plug. You can use a 19mm end wrench. There we go. So inside the fill plug is our dipstick as well. And so we'll use that to check the level once we get it full. All right, so we've got our MERCON ULV. We've got our pump screwed into the top, and we'll put the end of our hose into this fill port and start pumping. See you in about 3 hours. Yeah, this is a nice one. Make sure you buy this pump, guys. This one works really well. Oh my gosh, we've done 3/4 of the quart already. That's the whole quart already. Wow, I've tried these pumps before and they were terrible. It took like 50 pumps to do 1 quart. That was great. Okay, well, move on to the next quart. All right guys, so we put about 6 quarts into the transmission initially. Got the truck down off the lift, took it for a nice long 15-20 minute drive, got everything up to temperature. Came back to the shop here, added about another quart, so we have a total of 7 quarts in the transmission, and I'm going to show you how to check it. So here is our dipstick. You have to be very careful, it's super hot here next to the exhaust. So we'll put the dipstick in, pull it out. All right, so here is a look at that dipstick. You can see that we're just right in the middle of that B region. We're at full operating temperature, and that's the region that you want to be in. So we added a total of 7 quarts to get there. All right, guys, there you have it. A fluid and filter change and a shirt change on a Gen 2 Raptor. Please subscribe below if you enjoyed this content. When we actually drop it, there'll be a bunch more oil. Like it'll have 1.5 inches oil in it, you know? And it'll slosh everywhere.
And we're gonna have to tilt it forward to get it out.
I know. Like Sweet, dude. I'm oiling the exhaust right now. And a lot of people, they don't oil their
You're supposed
exhaust.
to lube it.
Yeah, you know, they skip lubing the exhaust. A lot of people do that. Not me. I lube it.